Sleep paralysis. I saw something I can't explain. The chipped porcelain doorknob felt cold under my sweaty palm. 3 weeks. 3 weeks since I'd moved into the old Victorian. 3 weeks since the nightmares started. Before, sleep was a sanctuary. Now, it was a battlefield. I dreaded the weight of the duvet, the descent into darkness. It always started the same. A pressure on my chest, a buzzing in my ears, and then paralysis. My body, a leaden weight, refusing to obey my frantic commands. And then it would appear. The first time, it was just a shadow in the corner of my bedroom, elongated and distorted by the moonlight filtering through the dusty window panes. I chalked it up to stress. I'd just left a decent job in the city, traded it for this crumbling relic and a freelance graphic design career that felt more like a precarious tightrope walk. My grandmother, Margaret Thorne, God rest her soul, or maybe not, I didn't know. I barely knew her. She left me this house, a place I hadn't set foot in since I was a kid. The second time, the shadow was closer. I could almost make out a form, a vague human silhouette, but impossibly tall and thin. I tried to scream, to thrash, but my body was locked in its prison. The air grew heavy, thick with a cloying, musty odor like decaying leaves. "It's just sleep paralysis, Elias," Dr. Sharma said, her voice calm and reassuring. "Stress, lack of sleep, very common." She prescribed a low dose of anti-anxiety medication. I took them, hoping for a reprieve. They didn't work. The episodes intensified. The shadow became more defined. I started seeing eyes, 2 points of crimson light burning in the darkness, and a mouth, a gaping maw that seemed to stretch impossibly wide. The paralysis lasted longer, the fear more profound. "You look terrible," Sarah said, her brow furrowed with concern. We were sitting at the kitchen table, me nursing a lukewarm coffee, she picking at a piece of toast. "Maybe you should take some time off, from work, from everything." I wanted to tell her about it, about the thing that haunted my nights, but the words felt ridiculous, absurd. How could I explain something I'd barely understood myself? How could I tell her about the cold dread that seeped into my bones every time I closed my eyes? "I'm fine," I mumbled, forcing a smile. "Just a little tired." Liar. I started researching the history of the house. The town library, a small, musty building smelling of old paper and forgotten stories, was my first stop. The librarian, a woman with kind eyes and a wealth of local knowledge, helped me sift through old records and newspaper clippings. The house had been built in the late 1800s by a man named Silas Blackwood. He'd made his fortune in something unspecified. There were whispers of dark practices, occult rituals, and a wife who disappeared without a trace. "This town, it has its secrets," the librarian said, her voice low. "Some things are best left undisturbed." That night, the paralysis came earlier, stronger. The figure was right beside the bed, its breath, a cold, fetid wind, on my face. I could see its form now, gaunt and skeletal, with long, claw-like fingers. The red eyes burned into my soul. This time, it spoke. A whisper, barely audible, but laced with malice. "You are mine." I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. Sarah was beside me, her face etched with worry. "Elias, what's wrong? What was that?" I couldn't lie anymore. I told her everything, about the shadow, the paralysis, the whispers. She listened, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "Okay," she said, when I was finished. "Okay, we need to do something. This isn't just stress, Elias. Something is really wrong." The next day, I went to see Old Man Hemlock. He lived in the house across the street, a ramshackle cottage shrouded in overgrown ivy. He was a local historian, a recluse who knew everything about the town's past. I'd seen him staring at my house, a knowing look in his eyes. He answered the door cautiously, his face wrinkled and weathered like ancient parchment. "I know why you're here," he said, his voice raspy. "You want to know about the Thorne house." I nodded, my heart pounding. "That house, it has a history, a dark history. Your grandmother, she knew things she shouldn't have known." He was reluctant to say more, but I pressed him, begging him to tell me what he knew. Finally, he relented. Silas Blackwood, the man who built the house, he was a collector of esoteric knowledge. He dabbled in things he shouldn't have. They say he made a pact, a bargain with something dark. He told me about the rituals Blackwood performed, about the sacrifices he made in the house's basement. He told me about the entity Blackwood had summoned, an ancient being of pure malice and darkness. Your grandmother, she inherited more than just the house, Hemlock said, his eyes filled with a chilling fear. She inherited it. That night, I found a journal in the attic. It was hidden beneath a loose floorboard, bound in leather and filled with my grandmother's handwriting. The first entries were normal, mundane descriptions of her life. But as I read on, the writing became more erratic, more disturbed. She wrote about strange dreams, about shadows in the corner of her room, about a feeling of being watched. Then she wrote of it. It wants something. I don't know what, but it's getting stronger. I can feel it. It's in the house, always watching, always waiting. The later entries were almost illegible, filled with frantic scribbles and disturbing drawings. They spoke of rituals, of sacrifices, of a desperate attempt to appease the entity. The last entry was a single chilling sentence. It's too late. It has me now. The line between sleep and wakefulness blurred. The entity appeared during the day now, a fleeting glimpse of its shadowy form in my peripheral vision. The house felt colder, darker. The air was thick with the stench of decay. Sarah stayed with me, her presence a small comfort in the growing darkness. But even she couldn't deny what was happening. She saw the shadows, heard the whispers. She was starting to believe. The climax came on a Friday night. I was sitting in the living room, trying to read, but the words swam before my eyes. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, and a gust of wind rattled the windows. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. Then I saw it. It was standing in the doorway, fully manifested. No longer just a shadow, but a solid form, gaunt and skeletal, with burning red eyes and a gaping maw filled with razor-sharp teeth. It raised its clawed hands, and a wave of pure terror washed over me. I screamed, but no sound came out. My body was paralyzed, but this time, something was different. I fought back. I focused all my will, all my fear, all my rage, and pushed against the paralysis. Slowly, agonizingly, I began to move. I lunged at the entity, grabbing a heavy candlestick from the table. I swung it with all my might, hitting it square in the face. The entity shrieked, a sound that ripped through the air like tearing metal. It stumbled back, momentarily stunned. I kept swinging, again and again, fueled by adrenaline and pure terror. The entity fought back, its clawed hands slashing at me, tearing my clothes, drawing blood. The room was a whirlwind of chaos. Furniture overturned, glass shattered, the air filled with the stench of ozone and decay. Sarah ran into the room, screaming. She saw the entity, saw the carnage. She grabbed a fire poker from the hearth and joined the fight. Together we managed to drive the entity back. It retreated into the shadows, its red eyes burning with hatred. Then it vanished. We stood there, panting and bleeding, the room a wreck. Sarah called the police. The police arrived, their faces grim. They surveyed the scene, took our statements. They were skeptical, of course. They saw a disoriented man, a hysterical woman, and a house in disarray. They wrote it off as a domestic disturbance, a drug-induced hallucination. I didn't care. I knew what I had seen. I knew what we had fought. I spent a night in the hospital, undergoing a psychiatric evaluation. The doctors couldn't explain what happened. They said I was suffering from extreme stress, possibly a psychotic break. They prescribed more medication. I refused to take it. I returned to the house, determined to end this. I spent days poring over my grandmother's journal, trying to decipher the rituals she had attempted. I found a passage describing a cleansing ritual, a way to banish the entity back to where it came from. It required a sacrifice, something of great personal value. I hesitated. I wasn't sure I could go through with it, but I knew I had no choice. The entity was getting stronger. It wouldn't be long before it returned, and this time I might not be able to fight it off. I gathered the necessary ingredients: herbs, candles, salt. I drew a circle on the floor of the basement, using chalk made from crushed bones. I lit the candles, chanting the words from the journal. The air grew cold. The shadows deepened. I felt the presence of the entity, watching me, waiting. I reached for the sacrifice. It was an old photograph, a picture of my parents, taken on their wedding day. They were smiling, happy, full of hope. They died in a car accident when I was a child. It was the only thing I had left of them. I hesitated for a moment. Then I threw the photograph into the center of the circle. It burst into flames, burning with an unnatural heat. The chanting grew louder. The entity manifested in the shadows, its red eyes burning with fury. It lunged at me, its clawed hands reaching for my throat. But the circle held. The entity couldn't cross the threshold. I continued chanting, my voice hoarse. The entity writhed and screamed, its form flickering and distorting. Then it began to fade. Slowly, agonizingly, it was being pulled back into the darkness. Just as it was about to disappear completely, it turned to me, its red eyes burning into my soul. It spoke, its voice a guttural growl that echoed through the basement. "This is not over," it said. "I will return." And then it was gone. The candles flickered and died. The basement was plunged into darkness. I was alone. I don't know if I succeeded. I don't know if the entity is truly gone. I still see shadows in the corner of my eye. I still hear whispers in the darkness. I still wake up in the middle of the night, paralyzed with fear. I don't know if I'm sane anymore. I only know that I survived. For now. I'm leaving the house. Selling it to someone who doesn't know its history. Maybe ignorance is bliss. Maybe they'll be safe. Maybe. But I'll never forget the red eyes, the whispering, the cold, and I'll always wonder if I truly banished it or if I just sent it away to wait, to bide its time, to return. Because something tells me this is far from over. The weight on my chest hasn't lifted. I can still smell the decay. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I swear I can still hear it whisper my name,